Hello everyone, this is Karen and thank you for joining me for this how to choose your first watercolor palette without getting anxiety over it video. Now there are a lot of people in this world and many of them just choose something, are happy with their choice and live on happily ever after. I'm not one of those people. I just think and rethink about my choices and in the end I never choose because I'm worried it's not the right choice for me. And this applies to everything, not just watercolors. But with watercolors it's especially painful because you have many brands, you have many colors, you have a lot of choice. And of course, if you're just starting out, you're like, yeah, which one is the right one for me? And this was a problem that I also had with my first watercolor palette, so I'm hoping to just give you tips and tricks on how not to get anxious about your first watercolor palette choice. And it's a very simple trick. When you're choosing your first watercolor palette, the question is always, is this the right one for me? And of course we try to answer this question with light fastness rating, with pigment, with binder information, and we go look at the technical stuff because we think it's the most important one, and so we're just bombarded with a lot of information and really, which one do I have to choose? Well, I'm here to tell you that the actual answer to is this the right watercolor for me is basically answering to two very simple questions, which are: is this set made for artists, and am I going to use this set, use it and abuse it without feeling guilty over it? Okay, let me explain a little bit these two parts. Is this watercolor set made for artists? By this I don't mean that you have to purchase a professional level first watercolor set, absolutely not. But what I mean is that a lot of stores, a lot of places now do watercolors. IKEA does watercolors, you can find them at Dollar Tree, at Tiger stores. Anyone who has a stationery line also does watercolors because they're pretty, they're colorful, and they can make them for kind of cheap, and so it's additional money into their pockets. But the thing is, these things are not made for artists, they're made for, you know, everyone, and are not targeted to artists. So the set you want to purchase is one that is used by artists. If you want to check, just go on YouTube or type on Google the name of the set you want and then look if there is someone out there who uses this set for artistic purposes. If the answer is yes, the set is for artists, first question out of the way, it's a yes. And second, it needs to be a set that you're not worried about using, that you're not feeling guilty over using it. It's a first watercolor set, you're going to need to practice. And so, out of 100 pieces that you're going to make, 90 of them are just going to be experiment, practice washes, and really not finished pieces. Because you're both exploring the watercolor world and you're exploring your own place in the watercolor world, so your style, your thing. And that takes time and that takes practice, which means paint. So I do understand the feeling of, oh my god, I am wasting my art supply. But let me tell you this, the only wasted art supply is the one you don't use, because it's not fulfilling its purpose. So if you have a watercolor set and you're able to use it and you're able to improve, then it's doing its job and it is the right one for you, okay? Don't let your supplies hold you back just because you're worried of using them. Just purchase one you do not feel afraid of using. How can you do this? It kind of depends on where your anxiety comes from. For example, for me the problem was money. If I have an expensive watercolor set, I'm going to save it for special occasions, so for for finished pieces, but if I have practice to do, if I want to practice my washes, I am going to go for the cheaper set. So if you are a student of watercolors, if it's your first watercolor palette and you have a money problem, then you should go with the cheaper set, just because you're going to be able to just use it anytime you want, because you know it's cheap enough to buy a replacement if you finish it, and it's not going to bankrupt you. Then there are people whose problem is the number of paints in their palettes. So maybe you have a very big palette and you're just using a couple of them, or you have the classic 12 half pan starter set and you need more paints. It kind of depends on what your needs are. You could, of course, start with a smaller set, and if you need more, you can just add them by purchasing the single pans. This is a little bit more expensive, but I think that it's best to start small and then add up as you go. Mostly because I remember purchasing like the biggest sets I could possibly find with 36 colors and ended up using like 8 pans, I think. 8, and the others I simply did not care about. So all in all, I would have preferred to have a smaller set, and right now I do purchase myself smaller sets instead of just having a ton of colors to choose from. Of course, everyone is different, so there are probably a lot of other anxiety and problems that I haven't mentioned, but these two are the ones that I have, so I felt like I could explain them better. So the thing is, as I said, understand your anxiety and find a way around it so that your palette can fulfill its purpose for you, which is to start with watercolor, to practice, and to get better at watercolors without feeling too guilty over it. Now that you know how to choose your first watercolor palette without getting anxiety over it, you can just go and pick the perfect one you want. As long as it's for artists and it doesn't make you feel guilty about using it, it's going to be the right one for you, and so make your watercolor experience perfect. Now, I do understand that a video like this that does not give any suggestions is kind of meh. So I've brought up some tabs on my laptop, which I've opened here, on four watercolor sets that I think should be a very good fit for a first timer. These are all sets that I own, and so I can tell you that I do like these sets, and they have like very good characteristics for first watercolor sets. Now, they all kind of fulfill my own requirements for watercolors, so they don't have to have that many colors, so no more than 24, and they need to be on the cheaper side. So I don't have anything over 25-ish euros or so, around $30. They're all less. So, let me give you my suggestions. First one, which is like the cheapest one and the one everyone will suggest you, which is the Winsor & Newton Cotman set with 12 half pans. There is also the version with 14 half pans, but the 12 half pan set is very cheaper, and really the price difference does not justify the 2 pans that you get on the 13 half pan set. So Winsor & Newton Cotman, it is a reliable company. They are good watercolors and it's a good starter set. It is not like the top one or the one that I would prefer, mostly because the color intensity is not that great, but it is cheap and it's very good for a starter set. The second set, and it's for people who kind of have my problem of I want very bright colors, I want so bright colors that they burn, but do not want to spend that much money over them. The Prima Marketing Tropical set, I believe it's the one that fits the description the best, because the colors are very intense, they are very vibrant. It is still a cheaper, kind of cheapish watercolor palette and a very good one for practice. It is a very good set, so I really recommend that. Third option, the White Nights 12 full pans watercolor set. This is the set for people who kind of need a lot of paint because they think that a half pan really has too little to work with. Personally, it was a problem I had in the beginning before realizing the color payoff and color intensity of watercolors. I really wanted like a bucket of watercolors, and I went with the White Nights. I really like them because they reactivate really easily and they are very pigmented. Not as pigmented as the Prima Marketing watercolors, and they are a little bit more opaque than other watercolors, but I still think that it is a very good choice, especially if you're worried of wasting your paint. You have a lot here. You really have a lot. You're not going to be able to finish it, even if you try. My set is still there after 2.5 years. I'm still full. What the hell are you doing? I'm not practicing enough, evidently. Fourth and last is going to be the Shinhan Professional Watercolor Paint Set of 24 color in 7.5 ml tubes. This is the set that I've chosen that has the most color, but still a limited amount of colors. At least for my needs, 24 is enough and I really don't need more. Also, the 7.5 ml tube is enough paint to last you for a lifetime, so you will not need to worry about that. It is very pigmented, very transparent, and I really like it a lot because it reminds me a lot of the Magello Mission Gold set that really costs a lot more. The only problem with this set is that it does not have a palette, so you need to purchase that separately, and this set already costs 23 euros or $26, so you're just going to fork out a little bit of extra money, which is why this is like the most expensive one out of the four. But I still think it's a very good set and I really do enjoy using it. Of course, there are not just these 4 sets, but these are the ones that I have used in the past and that fulfill all my requirements for what a starter set should have. Of course, there are others like the Van Gogh 12 half pan set or the Daler Rowney's Aquafine set. So, of course, there are others, but these were the ones that I felt like suggesting just because I've tried them and I do like them. Of course, just feel free to swim in the sea of watercolor palettes and choose the perfect one for you, of course, without getting anxious over it, because art is supposed to be fun, watercolor is supposed to be fun. If you get anxiety from it, really, let's pick something else, I don't know, gardening. Then you get anxiety over your plant dying, and honestly, I prefer getting anxious over a watercolor set than my plant dying. I love my plants. Okay, so this is the end of the video. I thank you for being with me. Subscribe if you like my content, and I will see you next time, hopefully.